Welcome, everyone, to the C-Suite Sales and Marketing Perspectives podcast. I'm Steve McDonald, your host. Today, we've got a super interesting guest on. We've got Marc Gasser. Now, Marc, you are currently the Chief Customer Officer at a company called CREATEQ, and I want you to talk a little bit more about that. But that only begins to define who Marc is, right? Over the last couple of decades, you started over 10 different companies. And there's just a tremendous amount of learning that comes with that, which goes right to our topic today, which is how your sales North Star and your tech stack is the key to success. So we want to talk a little bit about that. And your sales North Star, I think we're going to start there. But before we do, I want to learn a little bit more about you because in our past conversations, I learned that you were a paraglider and you go up into the Swiss Alps and you jump off. I'd love to learn a little bit more about your business and your personal background before we get started.
Yeah, so the older we grow, the more we look back and see, where are the patterns, what we usually do, or why do we do things. And what we just discussed about is what I really love is if I go up and the hill and take my tent and my paraglider with me, and then I land or I'm on the top of the mountain and have the feeling that, hey, that's the full freedom, full flexibility you have. Wow. And still everything is different. Even though you go up the same mountain, there's different winds, there's different conditions, and the sun shines differently. So it's always something new you have to adapt to. And I think when I look back to the companies I built, I always liked exactly this change, this new options or the new opportunities which came up over time, if it's new technology stacks or if it's machine learning in 2012, or if it's just new ways of how to develop software faster with, let's say, AI-assisted coding. This is always what really motivates me, what I'm passionate. And yeah, the companies I also analyzed, I'm getting bored if it's in a maintaining phase, if it's just like keeping on the lights and just improving a little bit. That's not what excites me. I think that's maybe also the relation of paragliding. It's excites me to do something new, to explore new countries, to explore new land. And this is where I come from, and I see like now being 43, reflecting more on why you do things. This is why I came up with, okay, I think this is about the change I really love.
Well, I'm gonna dub you a B2B adrenaline junkie, just like jumping off the mountain, right? Get the company up, get it going, let somebody else maintain it. You want the next new thing, and that's great because all of that is key learning here. I'm just gonna start us out and define for us, if you could, the idea of what you call the sales North Star. And we all know what North Star means, but I want to know what you mean by it and why it's such, a key factor to our success.
Mhm. So you start with the easy question, Steve. No, I mean, I think it's a really tough one, but the story I just told about new and change, if you bring that to a company, it's usually not that easy for all the people which have to run after you. So usually there are some people who run with you, or they say like, oh, I see this direction, and then they jump forward, but some maybe are needing more details, more structure. They hold back, or they hold on what you have. They hold on the assets, and so what happens is a big gap, right? So and that's why I see entrepreneurship is a lot about those different kind of perspectives. So the entrepreneur, the founder, the main task, in my opinion, is to give also in rough times, in good times, to give always the direction and to maybe climb up the hill and see what's coming next, what's behind this little forest there, what's behind this little rain shower. So to see what's coming, and maybe he doesn't know, she doesn't know, but it's still you give the way, and then you motivate the people, but you also explain why you're going in this direction. While the management also has an important role, but let's say maybe more operational, maybe more in depth, maybe more in exactly the environment these persons are.
So
And
I have to ask the question, and I'm going to completely go off script from anything we've talked about here before, but defining that North Star, right? When you're in the middle of growing that business and aligning the team behind you, I get 100%. How much does that play into the actual creation of the company? You've created 10 companies. I'm on my fourth, right? And I know there's the inspiration that we see. They're like, okay, we need to have a company around that. We can be really successful around that. Does that original entrepreneurial kind of inspiration help define that North Star? How are they connected?
Mm, I think it really starts at the core values you have. So what's really drives you. And I mean, a business idea doesn't just come up like, hey, let's try this out and let's see if
Right,
the market works. So
right.
I think it's much more. It's some ideas were like processed for years, and then the timing has come that you said like, hey, this is it. This is really cool. We could try. It's a really good opportunity. Maybe you do it without VCs. Maybe you do with your last exit, or you need, of course, an investment. And I think when timing meets the the right idea, and then also some people, then magic can happen. And I think that's the interesting part when you see, hey, we have this kind of common values. Yes, I also like to have this, love to have this progress, this ownership, and that would work together. So I think it's you need something or someone to unlock it. But I think it's about value, which is deep, deep, deep inside, and that what makes a company starting. But it's a really tough question. So I don't know if you could do plan a company just on the on the board and see like, this is how it should work. Maybe let's copy what we have in the US, and then let's try it. I'm not sure if this is the easiest way. Some companies showed that it works, but for me, it never worked. Like doing some copycats. So I always had to have an intrinsic motivation to, hey, let's try this out. This could be something interesting. We processed it for years, and what do you think? Then it's also about commitment from yourself, that everybody understands you're running in one direction and not in several directions. And this is, I think, what makes companies grow. And by the way, not all of my companies succeeded, but that was also interesting to see like, okay, maybe I was the only one convinced in in this direction, and so that's why the customers weren't. So that also happens.
Well, I know that the North Star concept, right? The sales North Star concept. I know like in my businesses that you're constantly reminding people of why we're doing what we're doing, right? You never stop doing that. And you never stop motivating them, right? And so like this North Star, not only is it like strategically important, but it's also like I use that, like we're heading in that direction, but guys, here's why, right? And here's why this means so much. And here's a client that just completely validated and how we impacted their business in phenomenal ways and brings stories into the company that like galvanize the company, that make everybody so proud to be a part of the company, no matter what their role is, right? Because they're contributing to something bigger, right? We're not just creating widgets, right? We're impacting people's lives, right? We're enabling great things to happen. Like, how much of that is part of this North Star? Like, or just your words, how important is that inside of a company to be the number one inspirator like that, the number one motivator?
Yeah, I think you pointed out the most important parts already. I think it's really about giving this direction, reminding them about the why, and also look at the assets you have. So why us? Not only why the market, but also why us? It's a really important question. I'm currently really doing this in my company right now to get the team together and then to shape this North Star, and it's a process over time. So at the moment, I'm really working on where are the boundaries and where is the direction. So that everybody is not really like falling apart or falling aside on this critical mission. And it's kind of a maze where you have to navigate through, and then there is a lot of movements around with market, with existing customers. So it's tough. But I think the most important part I see is if you have people who, first of all, agree on the why, and then, in my opinion, always got to a point where it became clearer and more tested. So it was really wide in the beginning, and the North Star defined a kind of a range or a zone where you have to land. But then it became more and more concrete, and we tested also with sales tech stacks, like, hey, which message resonates, which positioning works best, and this in combination with the team discussion, it takes maybe 1-2 months to really define the North Star and to see it, that it works and the people stand behind it, and they don't see it as a threat, because usually the North Star topics are also quite bold and punchy. So it's okay if it starts a conversation and if the people are like, hey, what the hell are you doing here? But then you need also get this energy and then driving it in the right direction.
So you just brought up within there a whole bunch of stuff, but you started talking about the tech stack, right? And improving out the messaging and the positioning behind your North Star. Tell me, because that was in our title, right? Is that then the sales North Star and the tech stack that are keys to your success? Talk about the technology and the tech stack as part of our
Mhm.
key.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, sales tech, it's a huge topic. There is a lot of opinions, religions out there, as you know. Um, and usually companies have too many SaaS solutions already in place. So it's always a question about the licenses, and do we really need that one? But I think the important conversations happens before. And this is a bit, hey, what do you want to achieve as a, let's say, sales system, that you are more productive? So, because I really think it's all about time to market, time to value, that you are fast in reaction when there is need, there is demand. You need to be reactive and very fast. So, um, what I see is the main question you have to ask is, hey, what makes your whole process, not only a part of it, what makes your whole process most productive? Because usually people tend to try out the use case. Hey, now let's implement a meeting transcription tool into our Teams or Zoom meetings. Like, okay, yeah, nice. But does it really make you more productive? Maybe a bit, but I'm pretty sure the whole implementation took a while. So you're break even again about the time you saved. And I think it's more about having a system in place, that it starts from the CRM. What is important? Do you really need a lot of information? Maybe it's enough to have only these attributes, and then go further to, hey, how to fill it, how to make sure that we have a channel that's working. Is it LinkedIn? Is it maybe webinars? Or is it like the industry survey, a benchmark study? Like, you need to find where you really can be, um, or you get the most traction, and there you scale most. So it's about testing it out and then going in this direction. There is no blueprint which works for every company. So I've seen so many companies. I was also um, helping about 100 companies in my consulting businesses to find this blueprint, to adapt it for their sales engine. Meaning, first you go to, let's say, their HubSpot, you find those conversion rates along the journey. So you try to find where they have the bottleneck, and based on this information, you try to fix it and scale it in terms of what worked, what didn't work. So you make this one better and more, what you have a proven number on it. And I think really to see this and to have this perspective, like, okay, first of all, you don't have any quality data in the CRM. And then second, you don't know where the bottleneck is. And third, you don't know which tool or channel works best. So maybe let's start at the beginning. And that's usually the case, that people just have the feeling like, hey, if I do it more or better with some AI tools, it starts working automatically, and it doesn't. So I never seen that without the system, a sales engine which is thought through, I never seen it. It's possible to scale. It's starting maybe to give some inputs where it is, but um, you need to really find and dig deeper and analyze the numbers to see where you have to, yeah, invest also.
Everything, my takeaway from what you just said there is we are in the B2B world, we are never at a loss or a lack of what we think we need to do. Right? It's like the C-suite, everybody, we have so many opinions of what we think is absolutely the right direction to do. A neighbor of mine actually works in mergers and acquisitions, and she buys big companies, and then she'll take pieces of the companies, and do we keep that? Do we sell that? What are we going to do with this piece or that piece, and how do we combine? And she'll talk to these executives, and she'll ask them. She'll like, just share with me like your documents around your ICP, and for their ideal customer profile. And she say, it's amazing. I'll get handed like 3-year-old documents, right? And what reminded me of that story was that what you just said is that you get into like their CRM systems, and they don't know the data. They don't know what's working and what's not. We're making gut level decisions, right? And what I'm taking away from this is if you've got your North Star and then you got your sales tech stack and you can test and you can refine, you don't have to use the guesswork. You don't have to use just your gut on what you think is right. Is that a good takeaway? Is that
Mhm.
or expand on what you mean?
Hey, I would add the learning from the current situation. So I started with two new business partners in this CREATEQ, and we basically found a greenfield company. And what I mean with that is this company provides subscriptions for software engineering teams. So you can have a monthly subscription for a whole Scrum team, for instance. You can scale up and down and really focusing on, let's say, topics like cybersecurity, compliance. And there is a lot of assets, but there wasn't any activity other than employer branding in the last 28 years. So there wasn't really a structured sales process in place. There wasn't any marketing, and it's amazing how this company evolved over time and also grew in for just recommendations from other customers. But I think times changed a bit, and that's why we came also into the game to say like, hey, we have such a great asset, we have such great people, we have a really interesting customer base, but there is nothing been done to scale it, and it's everybody wins when scaling. So when we can make the same, just more and more optimized, it's really interesting for the team members, the employees, which have more interesting tasks to do, but also the whole operations gets more efficient. And I think this is a super nice scenario where we haven't found that often, because usually you have like a problem of there is nothing there or no assets,
Right.
and then you have to do the marketing without no assets. And now this challenge I see is like, wow, there's so much things here. But to your question, what you should never forget is, yes, you have these assets, but usually people tend to over engineer a super complicated idea, I don't know, campaign. And if you manage to balance simplicity with this overviewable vision and the North Star in your tech stack and with the people, I think that's how you define winning teams. That you manage to bring this together, like the right people who drive the system, a simple system, and also a direction where you say like, hey, this is a really nice and interesting area. Let's go there, and together we're gonna succeed. So this motivation needs to come from internal, and I think this is what I experience at the moment is like super interesting to analyze and to see that if they're assets, it's not just running and giving a direction. It's like bringing them on board.
So you just said this. This comes internally, right? Um, how important is internally the leadership of the organization? What's the role of a strong leadership in making sure this is all successful?
Yeah, I think it goes back to what are the roles of these different kind of management layers. And I really try to formulate it with most respect for each layer. It always comes a bit like, these are better, these are not better. No, not at all. It's really about the ownership for like, let's say the C level is together with the board to understand like, hey, which direction are we going? What is the strategic point of view? Where are we unique? Where do we differentiate? What do we know from the market which others don't? And we really can emphasize and put forward, because something is changing. There I see the clouds coming up. There I see some bright sky. So what does this mean for the company? I think this is the C-level decisions, and this is reflected into, hey, what customers, what people you need, and also what is that all activities should be aligned with that. And then if it goes down to the middle management, it's a lot more into what does the North Star, for instance, mean in operational daily business. So does it mean we have to invest in one of these, let's say, DevOps areas, or in cybersecurity? So I think it gives direction, but you also need to make sure what does it mean in detail. And I would like to have a North Star where you always can decide like, hey, this is a good opportunity or not. So that it's really clear, like, does this help to go to this 100 million company you want to be, or whatever your North Star is? And if you define that clearly enough, you have a hint, like maybe not.
Right.
Is this
Right.
partnership with this small ad agency really important right now? Maybe not. Is this other opportunity where you can sponsor this huge event better? Maybe yes. So you have a direction, you have a guidance which you can align the whole team with, and I think then you've found the right North Star, right?
It becomes this, it's the filter to run all decisions
Yeah.
through, right? There's a lot of filters we have to run decisions through. I want to ask you something, because the biggest filter is your North Star is to satisfy the needs of a customer, right? An ideal customer profile, right? And I mentioned earlier, like companies having like 3-year-old ICP definitions that they're dusting off. And how important is truly understanding and defining your customer alongside of the sales North Star? Like Amazon, they're a B2C company, but they have a huge B2B division. And they have this concept called the empty chair. I don't know if you ever heard about it, but it used to be before, when you had like physical meetings and not virtual meetings, that there was an empty chair at every meeting, and that chair represented the customer. And as if the customer was sitting here with us today in this meeting, how would that influence the decisions that we're making? Right? So we're on this line of thought of this North Star as a massive filter for helping us make decisions. Is the customer equal to that? Is it something like, how do you view the customer as part of that decision-making filtering that we use in our companies?
Yeah. Hey, I think this concept you just mentioned is nothing new. I mean,
Right.
the buyer persona and this whole ideas of creating the image of the customer, representing all your 75 segments, whatever you have. So that's nothing new in user experience, right? So it's an old concept. But what I think it's really healthy is if you involve with a, let's say, small customer advisory board, which is maybe a critical one, but also one you can build the relationship at the same time. It's like, hey, look, for the moment we have this business ongoing, but I really need you for, let's say, once a month, this meeting where we challenge the outcomes. It's really important for me. We have a small fee we can pay you, that's it. But I never heard a customer saying no to this, because either the relationship is not good and they see like, okay, maybe I have to improve, or maybe they see like, yeah, there is potential because everybody can get better. So I have a really good experience of having a small customer advisory board. And what I personally do is I see those people then more and more often in front of me when I say something, like if they are included in your process, then like often the name drops like, hey, what would X say to this? And then
Right.
and it comes up like, okay, yes, maybe it's kind of the gatekeeper, and then it becomes this empty seat. But
Yeah.
I would rather go very practical, hands-on, and asking them for, hey, would you mind to join the team?
It's there's a bigger trend here. I last week I interviewed a 5-time B2B CRO, and one of the companies that she had previously been at, she said, I came in and there was no plan. There was no annual plan, 2-year, 3-year, 5-year. There was no plan. They had dashboards, they looked at numbers, they met all the time, and they had just grown organically, right, into a very large company. But they had no plan, right? So they had no sales North Star. They had no optimization process, a tech stack that helped support that. They didn't understand their ICP. They didn't have it. They didn't have some of the basic foundations. When you talk about, like, there's this, it's an old concept, the idea of having a plan, like a North Star is an important part of a plan, right? And having leaders that stick to that and ask, do I have the plan? And do I have a way to evaluate the plan? Do I have a way to optimize the plan? Do I have a way to understand my customers, right? What's amazing in your consulting firm, I'm leading to a question here for you, which is you consult with a lot of companies and how many of them just lack some of the basics, the foundations, right, of understanding, not necessarily understanding their business, but having a plan in place that can be evaluated, that can be refined, that can be optimized, right? And the key components of that.
Mhm. Yeah, it's like it's a tough reality, because I've never seen a very complete picture. Never. So when you analyze a company, you always see like there is some reality check from, hey, I don't have time. I'm the whole day in meetings. I really have to fix this relationship from this customer. I really need to run this event. I need to do something which is just more urgent because someone is behind this stress and makes it more important. But it's really tough to fight for your time, to also take out of your calendar and say, hey, this is strategy time. No one can take it away from me. And this is what has to be done. This is why maybe consultancy works, right? Because
Right.
you pay for it, that you have time to sit together with someone and this person is guiding you, that you find time for your own strategy. But I mean, what I like is like simple frameworks, like a strategy map, or also April Dunford's sales pitch, positioning, structure, and I think there is a lot of nice frameworks which they're nothing else than a plan to fill out the empty fields. And once you fill them out and you discuss them with the people, you are more aligned. So it's a structure to give you a step-by-step role game to find like, okay, you talk about the same thing. Hey, we're actually aligned. That's the outcome. And I
Right.
think this part doesn't happen that often, that the leadership team takes this time. We just came back, 3 days ago. We went to the mountains in the leadership team, and we discussed exactly this. Like, even though we had one, we need to refine, and we do it on a quarterly basis. I think it's so valuable to adjust the goals, to adjust everything you learned, and adapt like continuously. I think this is very valuable, and it rarely happens because usually the time in your calendar is booked by operational activities. That's why, back
Yeah.
to the role you mentioned initially, I think C-level need to fight for empty calendar entries, because then they have the time to climb up the hill and look out what's coming, what's going on, and also bring this information back to the team and then support them in terms of, hey, yes, it's maybe tough, but look, this is around the corner, or maybe it's the other way around. So, hey, I see something coming. Maybe you need to prepare for it. I think this is our job of an entrepreneur.
I love that. It's true. And it's almost, I don't want to say ego or something, but like having a booked calendar, like I'm busy. I'm an important person, right? Look at my calendar. I need an executive assistant just to help keep track of my calendar, right? But that's not a status symbol.
Mhm.
It's not, and actually then the calendar starts to control us instead of us controlling our companies. And so that's like a really important takeaway I'm taking away from this. But You
And it's
talked,
more difficult to say no to these calendar entries than saying yes. Saying yes is easy. It's like accept and done.
yeah.
And no, there's a result on it. Like, okay, then you need to reschedule. People are asking back. So it's more tricky to say no and to fight for your time.
I I want to ask because we've covered a lot of territory here, but I want to ask if there was one single takeaway that the C-suite executives that are watching or listening to this podcast, what's the single most important thing that you would want them to take away from everything we've talked about here today?
Hey, I would point out in a direction which is maybe not something we talked about, but I think if you have this in mind, and maybe it relates to the emptier calendar, I don't think your job is to be everywhere. I think it's really, as an entrepreneur, it's your job is to build a machine that runs without you. So make yourself not important, and giving them vision, giving them tools, giving them people, bring it together that it starts working, that the machine and the engine starts, and it gets better over time. In the beginning, it's a really tough ride, but then it gets smoother. I think this is the really important takeaway, that if you manage to be less important and not doing everything everywhere all at once, which is the hustling mode, which is an important part of starting a company, but you need to get rid of this very, very soon. Otherwise, the machine never starts running.
Well, here's one thing I know for sure, Mark, is that people are going to have questions. Would it be appropriate if I gave a link out to your LinkedIn profile that people could reach out and ask questions if they had them?
Sure. I mean, I'm not sure if I can answer them because yeah, I see this daily struggle, and you see it's always different, but really, really happy to talk about it. I love this topic, so we could go on and on and on. Reach out to me. Super interested to hear your opinion, and those are your hacks, how you manage the daily operations while running a company, while being an entrepreneur. That's definitely very welcome. Contact me, and I will definitely read it.
Well, Mark, thank you. The mission of this podcast is to take C-suite executives, right, from all different perspectives around the B2B industry all over the globe and share our insights on what helps us grow our businesses. And if we each can do that, then I call that the rising tide that lifts all boats, right? And you did that in a big way today. And I just wanted to say thank you very much.
Thank you.